welcome to No Skips, the show where we talk about albums where you put the album on, you hit play, and you don't skip any songs. Today, we are talking about my favorite band, Fall Out Boy, once again. Now, I should really make this its own series because of how much I love this band, but we have already talked about Take This to Your Grave. We have already talked about From Under the Cork Tree. We have already talked about Infinity on High. You know what comes next if you're a Fall Out Boy fan. Folie, Deux. Yeah, and I'm only going to say that title once because I'm sure I'm going to mess it up if I try to do that again. And I probably messed it up when I just said it. But anyway, you know what album I'm talking about, the one that came out with in 2008, December of 2008 to be specific. This was the album that came out right before Fall Out Boy went on hiatus. And it would be about 4 years before we would get our next Fall Out Boy album. In fact, 2008 was when this one came out. 2013 was when Save Rock and Roll came out, which is another good, solid release by them. But again, that's about 5 years. About 5 years we had to wait after this album. Let's talk about that right from the jump. Let's talk about that before I get to the runtime of this album and the singles. Why did they go on hiatus? Okay, there's a lot that people think about, a lot of fan theories out there of why they went on hiatus, but the band's also actually said what was going on. And I think a big part of it was fan reaction to this album and the fact that the guys were kind of burnt out. If you look at how many albums they released in the time span they did, it's not like they took a lot of time off, okay? Take This to Your Grave came out in 2003. You had From Under the Cork Tree in 2005. You had Infinity on High in 2007. This one comes out 2008. That is a lot of albums in a very short time span. And that's just the albums. Like, we're not talking about public appearances. We're not talking about personal relationships and things that, you know, just life happens. And we're not talking about how many tours they went on, how many shows they did night after night after night. They were tired. They were tired. And the fan reaction to this album is something that kind of embarrasses me as a Fall Out Boy fan, just how rude people were about this, because people hated this thing when it first came out. And don't let them tell you otherwise, okay? Don't let them tell you otherwise, because there's some Fall Out Boy fans out there that think we forgot. We didn't forget, okay? Us true Fall Out Boy fans remember how some of y'all acted when this album came out, because it was different. It was different than Infinity on High. It was different than From Under the Cork Tree, and it was certainly different from Take This to Your Grave, which a lot of people would have been happy if the band just would have kept doing album after album of Take This to Your Grave remixes, essentially. But they wanted to go in a different direction. They wanted to challenge themselves. They wanted to keep it relevant. That's what Fall Out Boy always said. If we're not relevant, we ain't doing it. And I don't blame them for that feeling, okay? But on this album, they wanted to recapture the feeling that they had when they were making Take This to Your Grave. So they kind of made themselves have deadlines and things like that that were a little bit more tight, a lot more pressure to the band to get this album done, because they wanted to simulate what they had went through that made them famous, essentially. You know, get back to their roots, if you will. But musically speaking, they were trying things that were really, really different from what originally made them famous. And a lot of people, like I said, they didn't like that at first. And we'll get to the good part of this story here in a minute. But at first, they didn't really like it. Now, the album did well. The album has continued to do well over the years, okay? But at first, they didn't really like it. Let's talk about the runtime of this thing. It is 50 minutes long, okay? 50 minutes long. It is worth every single second. I will say that to you right now. It is worth every single second of your time, all right? All 50 minutes that it'll take to listen to this thing, you should do it. But the singles that came out, I don't care. That was the first single that came out. America's Sweethearts was the second single. Head First Slide into Cooperstown on a Bad Bet was the third single off this record. And What a Catch Donnie was the fourth single. Now, the original album, if you don't count the deluxe version, the original album had 13 tracks on it. And I have never been a fan that says outlandish things. Like, if I don't like something that a band does that I generally enjoy, I kind of keep it to myself because they don't want to hear it. And I don't want to be on record saying something that's, you know, mean or whatever. I'm just not a mean-spirited guy. So when I first heard the singles from this album, I knew it was different. I couldn't put my finger on whether I liked it or didn't like it, but when I commit to something, when I become a fan of somebody or a band, I am loyal. Okay, I am loyal. So it was one of those things where it's like, I don't know if I like this, I don't know if I don't like this, but I know I love Fall Out Boy. So I'm gonna be here for them regardless. Even if they put out a straight hip hop rap album, I'm gonna be here for it because I'm a fan of them. You know what I mean? And I know some people are like, yeah, well, why would you listen to something you don't like? But anyway, with this album, like I said, I couldn't put my finger on whether I liked it or didn't like it, but it was one that the more I listened to it, the more I allowed myself to, really listen to this album front to back with no distractions, the more I started to peel away the layers of this thing and really came to love this album. And it took a little bit, but I got there. Okay, I got there. And I think a lot of fans were like that because after the band went on hiatus, a lot of people started looking at this album and saying, if this is the last thing we ever get from this band, maybe we should take a second listen to this thing. It was almost like when you appreciate somebody after they're gone. You know what I mean? Like, and this is going to sound dramatic, but like somebody dies and then all of a sudden you're out there posting Facebook stuff about, oh, I love that person or whatever, or that person was so great. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell that person that when they were still here? And I feel like some Fall Out Boy fans kind of had that feeling with the band when they went on hiatus. It was like, oh, well, maybe we reacted a little too harshly to that in a way. And people started to love this album. And now people are begging the band to play songs off this album live because after a little bit, they got it. They got the point of this album. And I got to tell you, outside of the singles, which I love all the singles, outside of the singles, here's some of the other songs that I love off this album. She's My Winona is a great song. The Ship Gold Standard is up there. It's up there with my favorite songs from this band. Like not just this album, the band entirely. The Ship Standard is one that I really, really enjoy. The Ship Gold Standard. I want to make sure I get the title right on that one. What a Catch Donnie is great as well. It's a slower song, but it's a really good one. And one of the things I loved about this album was that there were some times in some of the songs where they would actually bring up lyrics from older songs and they would incorporate them in new ways. And I really enjoyed that because it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like I wouldn't expect them to do that. And here they are doing it. So I enjoyed that. Disloyal Order of the Water Buffaloes, a very good song. And then let's see, what are some of the other ones that I enjoyed off of this? Tiffany Blues was a good one. West Coast Smoker was another good one as well. Again, I always feel kind of redundant when I say that because the show's called No Skips for a reason. You don't skip any songs. So yeah, I love all of these songs, but those are some of the ones that like are really, really songs that I will go to in my playlist just because, But this album, again, it was the last one that we had before the hiatus, and man, was it a good one. It was a really, really good one. And it kept us tied over until 2013 when the band got back together. This album, again, 15 minutes long. If you listen to it, if you're not a Fall Out Boy fan, but maybe you listen to it based on my recommendation, first of all, I'm honored that you would do that. Second of all, let me know if you skip any songs on this album, okay? Because I got a feeling you won't, because this one is kind of groundbreaking. Like I try not to say things that get thrown around a lot, but this one deserves it. It was groundbreaking. And again, it was one of those things where it was delayed appreciation. At the time, people didn't really appreciate it. But nowadays, I mean, that's the album that people go, whoa, when it comes to Fall Out Boy. So check it out if you haven't already. Again, came out in 2008. Folie, Deux. I said I wasn't going to say the title again, but I had to say it at least one more time. Hopefully I said it right. From my favorite band, Fall Out Boy. Check it out. If you, like I said, if you skipped any songs, let me know in the comments below. If you're like me and you don't skip any of them, make sure you put that in the comments below. I would greatly appreciate it. And remember to like and subscribe, my friends. I'll be back with you again. Probably not with a Fall Out Boy record, but I will have more of them on the show at some point. Hey, until we talk again, be good to yourself, be good to others in that order. I'll see you soon.